My ex-wife who left me broke and divorce begged. Please, let me move back in. I made a huge mistake. I responded, oh. Then I handed her the contact info for a housing program. Now, she is threatening to sue me for part of my new business. I came home expecting leftover pasta and maybe a rerun of something dumb on TV. Instead, I found a manila envelope on the kitchen table with my name typed neatly across the front. No handwriting, no post-it, just formal. I opened it, still half thinking it was some insurance thing or a survey. But it wasn't. It was a copy of divorce papers, signed, dated, and already filed. No note, no explanation. Just a legal notice and a list of demands, including half of everything I owned, including the country house my grandmother left me. That's when my ears started ringing. I remember sitting down slowly, as if the floor might tilt. I must have read that document 5 times. My wife, Lena, wanted out after 10 years. No conversation, no therapy, no warning. Just goodbye and I'll take your house, thanks. My name's Victor. I'm 38. I live in Evanston, Illinois, and I used to think my life was solid. Lena and I weren't passionate, sure, but we didn't fight. We had routines, systems. I handled the bills and zoning maps for the city. She managed her nutrition clients and essential oils and crystal inventory. It worked, until it didn't. Lena's lawyer wasn't subtle. He claimed she deserved more than half our assets because she'd been emotionally repressed during the marriage and had sacrificed career momentum to support my ambitions. I wish I could tell you that shocked me. What stunned me was her claim to the country house. My grandmother's name is carved into the hearthstone. Lena visited twice in 10 years and complained both times about the bugs. I tried calling her. She didn't answer, just texted back. All communication through legal channels from now on. Like I was some creep she matched with once on an app. The next 3 months broke me in ways I didn't even know I could crack. Her lawyer moved fast, freezing accounts, liquidating investments I had built since my 20s, pushing through aggressive settlement motions. My own lawyer, a quiet guy named Reese, tried to reassure me, but I could see it in his eyes. I was bleeding, and Lena wasn't stopping. At mediation, she sat across the table in one of her linen wrap dresses, sipping water like she was bored. She didn't even look at me, just nodded occasionally while her lawyer talked about long-term emotional toll and entitled recovery of shared assets. By the time it was over, I had lost over 70% of our liquid holdings. I had to buy her out of the house and agree to a one-time alimony payout that wiped out most of my emergency savings. She got the car, the downtown furniture, and access to the shared storage unit I had paid for since 2016. I got a stack of receipts and a stress rash that bloomed across my shoulders like wildfire. I remember walking out of the courthouse the day it finalized. It was drizzling. I didn't even have an umbrella. I just stood on the sidewalk watching cabs pass, wondering how the hell I didn't see this coming. I'd planned entire city grids, calculated impact studies for roads that won't be built until 2030. But I missed the one landslide that buried my life overnight. That's when I knew I wasn't just divorced. I was gutted, and I had no clue how to rebuild. I moved into the studio above a garage on Maple and 3rd. The place used to be an office for a lawnmower repair guy, and it still smelled faintly of grease and old coffee. My landlord, Rick, was a retired mechanic who rented it out for cheap because you seem quiet and don't look like the type to cook meth. I thanked him and promised to keep it that way. My bed was a futon. My table was an old drafting board balanced on 2 sawhorses. For a while, dinner was a rotating cast of canned chili, saltines, and cheap beer. The silence at night was unbearable at first. No Lena watching Instagram reels beside me. No diffuser misting up the room with eucalyptus and sage. Just the humming buzz of the fluorescent light above the sink and the occasional raccoon thumping around outside the dumpster. I stopped checking her socials. She'd already blocked me, anyway. Work, or what passed for it, came slow. I couldn't go back to city planning, too many burned bridges and too much shame. Instead, I started consulting. Little towns in central Illinois and Wisconsin needed help redrawing zoning maps or updating floodplain boundaries. It paid peanuts and took forever to get reimbursed, but it was something. And it kept my hands busy. I became obsessive with details. Every receipt, every mileage log, every invoice documented. I made a spreadsheet titled Regroup 1.0. I listed every expense, color-coded the payments, tracked each client communication in a separate tab. If a light bulb cost me $1.39, it went in the file. I wasn't letting anything slip past me again. I couldn't afford to. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was waking up alone and having to fill the hours. I used to plan vacations, dinner reservations, Christmas gifts. Now, I was planning how to get 2 consulting clients to pay on time so I could afford gas and groceries in the same week. I started walking in the mornings. Just a loop around the industrial block, nothing scenic. But it cleared my head. I'd think about what needed filing, who needed following up, what I could write off on my taxes. Some days I'd walk by the bakery just to smell something warm and alive. That became the new luxury. At night, the nightmares still came. Courtrooms, spreadsheets, Lena's voice reading from the legal documents with a smirk. I'd wake up sweaty and gasping, my chest tight like I was stuck under something. But eventually, those dreams started spacing out. I'd have 2 nights without them, then 3. One morning, I realized I hadn't thought about Lena for almost a full hour after waking. That felt like progress. My old life was gone. The house, the routine, the illusion of a stable marriage. But little by little, brick by brick, I started building something new. It was ugly, slow, and quiet, but it was mine, and no one was going to rip it out from under me again. It was late on a Tuesday when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was an unknown number, and I'd had a long day arguing with the township board about sidewalk setbacks. But something told me to pick up. Hello. A pause, then a shaky voice. Victor. I froze. I knew that voice. Even hollowed out and ragged at the edges. I knew it. Lena. She exhaled hard, like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Yeah, it's me. Please, don't hang up. I didn't say anything. Can we talk? She said, her voice trembling. Just for a minute, please. About what? I asked, flatly. She sniffled. I'm in a bad spot. Of course she was. I checked the time. 9:41 p.m. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Make it quick, I said. She let out a little sob that she tried to cover with a cough. I lost my housing. The co-living thing I was doing. It fell apart. The guy I was seeing, we broke up, and he took the lease with him. I've been sleeping on my friend Alana's couch, but she's moving in with her boyfriend, and her words tumbled over each other, rushed and panicked. I made a mistake, she said suddenly, leaving you. The way I did. I thought I was doing what I needed. I thought I'd be fine, but I'm not. I'm scared, Victor. I sat there, heart rate steady, detached, like I was listening to a voicemail from another life. She continued. I know this is a huge ask, she said, but is there any way I could stay with you? Just for a few days? Until I get something figured out? I let the silence sit for a moment, then I stood up, walked over to the little drawer where I kept my backup files, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I unfolded it slowly, like it was sacred. It wasn't. It was a printout with the phone number, address, and intake times for a transitional housing program 2 towns over. I had found it 6 weeks ago, not for her, but for myself, back when I thought I might lose the garage apartment. Do you have a pen? I asked calmly. There was a pause. What? A pen? I repeated. Write this down. I read the information off slowly, clearly. This is a non-profit housing resource. They'll help with temporary accommodations and job placement. She didn't respond. Got it? I asked. I can't believe this, she whispered. Believe it, I said. She started crying. You really won't help me? After everything? I already helped you, I said. You took what you wanted and left me bleeding. Now you want shelter from the storm you made. She hung up without another word. I folded the paper and slid it back in the drawer. Then I poured myself a glass of water and sat down. The quiet didn't feel as heavy this time. It felt like clarity. Months passed with no more letters, no more threats, and for once, no drama. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but earned. Work picked up. One town led to another. Soon I was consulting for entire townships. Zoning revisions, land use codes, transit corridor planning. I was doing the same kind of work I used to in the city, only now I could breathe. I made my own hours, picked my own clients, and if I didn't like someone, I didn't have to call them back. That part alone was worth everything Lena had taken. I moved out of the garage studio the day I landed a year-long contract with a township north of Springfield. It wasn't a mansion, but the new apartment had windows that actually let light in and a balcony that overlooked a quiet street lined with trees. It had a washer and dryer, a decent shower, and a little breakfast nook where I could finally sit with a cup of coffee that didn't taste like burned tin. I filled the place with secondhand furniture, nothing flashy, but it felt good, real, like something I chose for myself, not something someone else picked out to match a Pinterest board. About 3 months after the restraining order, I met Clara. We met at a zoning town hall in a library basement. She wasn't a client or a vendor, just the branch librarian sitting quietly in the back, taking notes on the new sidewalk proposals. After the meeting, she came up to me and said, I like the way you explain things. You don't sound like you're trying to sell something. I laughed. I'm just trying to keep trucks off residential streets. She smiled. That's still better than most people. We got coffee the next day. Clara was steady, thoughtful. Not the type to flood a room with noise or spin every story into a crisis. She liked books, quiet mornings, and routine. Her favorite thing was a spreadsheet she kept to track what she'd read and how long each book took. When I told her about my own spreadsheet, tracking expenses, billable hours, fuel costs, she didn't mock me. She just said, "Bet yours is color-coded too?" And I said, "Obviously." It wasn't some whirlwind. No sparks flying or impulsive road trips. Just two people who didn't need each other to fix anything. And maybe that's what made it feel safe. I still kept Ms. Draven on retainer, though I hadn't needed her since the court order. Lena and her family went quiet. No letters, no emails, nothing from her since that ridiculous spousal accommodation stunt. I heard, through the grapevine, that she'd moved again, possibly out of state. I didn't care enough to check. There was no moment where I thought, this is happiness. It was more like, this is peace. I'd forgotten how that felt. One night, Clara and I were sitting on the balcony, watching the sun drop behind the houses, and she turned to me and asked, "Did you ever think you'd make it out the other side?" I thought about that. "Barely," I said, "but I'm here now." And that was enough. It started with a letter. Again, this one came from a law firm I didn't recognize. Thick ivory paper, gold-embossed letterhead, addressed formally, Victor A. Mercer. I opened it at the kitchen counter, half expecting a bank promotion or some zoning association junk mail. Instead, it was a demand for mediation. Apparently, Lena had retained new representation. The firm's name was polished and corporate, the kind of lawyers who wore cufflinks and billed by the minute for breathing. The letter claimed that Lena was entitled to a share of the profits from my urban planning consultancy, citing skills and career infrastructure cultivated during the marriage. Their argument, if you could call it that, was that since I'd done similar work while we were together, and since she supported me emotionally during my early career, she had partial claim to any financial growth related to that work. I read that sentence twice, then a third time. Then I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. She wanted money from my consulting business, the one I built after she took everything else, the one that barely existed during our marriage, the one I had started with 2 clients and a used laptop I bought from a pawn shop. I called Ms. Draven immediately. She didn't laugh, not at first. She read through the document in silence, flipping pages like a machine. "They're trying to angle it as intellectual property and marital support," she finally said. "It's a stretch, a desperate one. You think they're serious?" "Oh, they're serious," she said. "But they're also stupid." She drafted a response that was half legal warning and half public slap. She referenced the restraining order. She included copies of Lena's post-divorce lifestyle expenses. She pointed out, line by line, that every contact, contract, and client I'd landed came after our separation. She even cited Lena's own claim, made under oath during the divorce proceedings, that she had no knowledge or interest in urban planning or municipal affairs. I signed it, sent it, and waited. They folded in 48 hours. No counterletter, no follow-up call, nothing. I figured one of their junior associates finally Googled the restraining order and realized they were about 2 seconds from a countersuit and possible sanctions. That should have made me feel victorious, but it didn't. It just felt done. Quietly, cleanly done. Lena had reached into the past with a greedy hand, and this time, the door slammed shut on her fingers. Not with violence, just with finality. That night, Clara made chicken and roasted sweet potatoes. We ate on the balcony. No noise but the wind and the occasional bark from the dog across the alley. After dinner, I opened my laptop, looked at my project queue, and added a new entry. Status: secure. That was it. No fanfare. No finish line. Just peace, locked in place. She was gone, and I was still here. I heard about the car from a mutual acquaintance, Doug, a city clerk I'd worked with on a sidewalk ordinance 2 towns over. He didn't know Lena personally, but he knew someone who did. Small towns are like that. Word travels. "She's still driving that white SUV?" he asked casually while we were reviewing parcel maps. I looked up. "Last I heard." He gave a small chuckle. "Not anymore." I raised an eyebrow. Doug shrugged. Apparently it got towed. Booted first, then hauled off 2 hours later. Unpaid tickets, expired tags, the whole circus. I didn't say anything, but I must have smiled a little. Doug continued, clearly enjoying the gossip. "She made a scene, screamed at the tow guy, tried to claim it was harassment, but they had the records lined up, 17 unpaid parking fines, one from over a year ago. The registration hadn't been updated since the divorce, either. It was like she thought she could just drive around and nothing would catch up to her." I nodded, but I didn't laugh. Not really. That SUV had been Lena's pride and joy. A luxury crossover she'd insisted on leasing the moment her settlement cleared. White leather seats, Heated steering wheel, panoramic roof, all the bells and whistles she could cram into something she couldn't actually afford to maintain. I remember seeing the Instagram post when she first got it. New season, new energy, new ride. Now, that energy was sitting in a municipal impound lot with a giant orange boot mark on the tire. I didn't feel triumphant, just confirmed, like watching gravity work. Later that evening, I got a text from Rick, my old landlord at the garage apartment. Rick, guess who's crashing on her cousin's pull-out couch in Bridgeview? Just saw her outside the liquor store, ranting about lawyers and toxic men. She looked like hell. I stared at the message for a second. Then I deleted it. No response. No reaction. No need. I poured a glass of water, closed my laptop, and sat by the window. Clara was out visiting her sister, and the apartment was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge and the creak of the radiator. There was a time I would have kept a folder, tracked the plates, the fines, the fallout. I used to write everything down. Every expense, every conversation, every shift in tone. Like if I documented it enough, I could control it. But not anymore. That night, I went into my cloud drive and deleted the old spreadsheet. Regroup 1.0. Gone. Lena had finally hit bottom. Not because I pushed her there. She did that all on her own. Choices meet consequences. And me? I had better things to track, better things to build. That weekend, Clara and I booked a trip to Door County. Nothing fancy, just trees, coffee shops, and quiet. The kind of getaway where nobody asks where you've been or what you're running from. Because for once, I wasn't running. I was already gone.